Welcome to the CeltsAreHere flagship podcast. Your usual host, Quinny, is out injured per se. He is in his sick bed. Quinny, if you're listening, we hope you're doing well and we wish you all the best. To host today, it's myself, Josh McCafferty. I'm stepping off the substitute bench to host this week's edition of the podcast. I am delighted to be joined by Meehall to talk about two big wins over Rangers and St Mirren. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. For the benefit of YouTube, you can see I'm completely sunburnt on my arms from watching cricket for 2 days. And beat Rangers, which is brilliant. I was really sick over New Year's, and that's exactly what I needed to make me feel better. And as we just discussed in off-air, the St Mirren game happened at the worst possible time for the Celtic TV Australian audience, so I've seen none of it, but we will. I've seen the highlights, so there you go.
That's
Minder, what a boy.
That was brilliant. Brilliant. We'll talk about the St Mirren game a bit later on, making us a bit jealous with your sunburn there because it's been absolutely cold, freezing, anything you can imagine. We've had it. New Year's Eve was a horrible night. It was absolutely peeing down in Glasgow, but hey-ho. We're through it now. To all our listeners, we've not had a podcast since the new year, so Happy New Year to you all. First podcast of 2024 is here. First off, the Glasgow Derby, 2-1 victory over Rangers. Goals coming from Paulo Bernardo and Kyogo Furuhashi to win the game. James Tavernier got one back for the visitors, but it didn't count for anything because they lost the game. And Celtic took away the crucial 3 points. Meehall, just how big of a win was this for Celtic?
Well, I don't want to say sizing, right? That's pretty big, but It was big. Like so I have a weird thing, right? Please, people don't hate me, but I back Rangers in every derby game, because I feel I'm one of these people. I'm so superstitious about it now. I have to be like, I'm putting $50 on them because that way I either win, and then if we lose, then I get my And they were. I'm trying to translate what the odds are. They do odds weird in Australia, but they were like 2.5 to 1, so 5 to 2, something like that. And I was like, that can't be true because I've been told that the Rangers are coming. Like I told they're good and we're terrible. But bookies very rarely get things wrong. So what I was following the odds all week, and I was like, this can't be like. I don't watch them except for when we play them, and I was like, we've been kind of crap, but I'm one of these. Styles make fights a lot in football, and we're crap against packed defenses, but Rangers won't do that. So, And the funniest thing is on what day was it? The 27th. You never know what day of the week it is. And
I know this time of year it's always mushed into one.
The day after Boxing Day, I played golf with 2 of them, which I didn't know when I was playing with some friends of friends. They were like friends of friends, right? Yeah. So I had to do 18 holes of golf with 2 of them, telling them how Clement had got them playing and how good they were and blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, I don't know, what's it? Form is temporary, class is permanent.
That's a very good show.
That's exactly how I thought about it. I was like, when I saw their team, I was like, how many of their team would get into ours? Not many of them.
Yeah.
Like the goalkeeper, maybe?
Goalkeeper, right back. You could even make an argument against the right back end.
Well, they're right back. I don't know. I'm also an avid reader of Follow. I like betting on Rangers, and I read Follow. I mean, maybe it doesn't. And I've got an English accent, so. But yeah, I'm convinced that guy will be worth. I don't know how many goals he's scored for Rangers. A lot, but I'd love to see how many have been directly a result of him not being able to pass the ball to his own second back.
Exactly.
They got away with just a red card out of him and Goldson not being able to pass to each other despite playing 200 games on the field at the same time, 10 yards apart. But so in hindsight, I think it means a lot more for us maybe than it does for them, because if we'd have lost, it would have been terrible.
Yeah.
I think for them, they've already invented a reason why they lost, which isn't that they aren't as good as us, but that's what they'll do.
Yeah, definitely.
So, that's the short answer.
Yeah, massive. For me, I was at the game with my uncle, my dad, and my cousin, as usually the crowd is, and we go, and we were sitting up there before the game, and we were like, for a derby, this is probably the derby we've went into, at least in the past couple of years, where we've feared the most out of a Rangers team, whether that be based on Celtic's form going into the game or whether it be the media hype that team have received. Brendan spoke about that after the game. We'll go into that in a minute. But I wasn't expecting to go out and beat Rangers 3-4-0 like I have potentially expected Celtic to do in previous derbies, but they got the win nonetheless. And in terms of the title race, it's a massive victory. Like you said, it's not seismic. Things can change in the blink of an eye because the Rangers have still got the 2 games in hand, and even if they win those, it's only a 2-point lead. So things are still very close at the top of the table. Scoring the opener in this one, this is a player who I've been very impressed by in recent games, is Paulo Bernardo. It was a brilliant finish. For me, I think the quality of this goal potentially has been overlooked due to how good Kyogo's goal was, but corner swung in by Luis Palma, and Sima's cleared header, so to speak, was a very poor one. He headed it into the ground. Something my dad actually pointed out when we were watching the highlights. When you're a defender, you're always told, as a kid in an academy, head it up the way. Sima heads it into the ground and gives Bernardo a brilliant chance to put his foot through the ball and into the back of the net, and that is exactly what he'd done. Whether that be because Sima is an attacker and he's used to heading it into the ground, Celtic don't really care. Paulo Bernardo doesn't really care, and he ran into the North Curve. Absolutely brilliant scenes. He picked up 2 assists in St Mirren. That is now 4 goal contributions in his last 3 games. He's coming on to form now. What do you make of him?
So, me and Quinny have discussed this, right? And I described him as a very Benfica player. Yeah. Like, he plays really between the boxes. And for me, I thought, I don't know if we need that player. Yeah. Like, I didn't understand why we signed him, because I thought, he's not our player. We've got Holm, who kind of also plays between the boxes. And what you actually need is someone like Hatate, who is willing to give the ball away to win it back, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
take risks. Yeah.
I thought he was a very, like, sometimes you want a guy who keeps the ball, but I think when you're playing against the pack defense, I'm not sure you do. And I don't know if he's been coached like this or he's got more confident, but what you can see, even the goal at Dundee, was it his first goal for us? Was his only goal for us? Oh, no, second goal. He got beyond his man. Like, he got beyond his, and I don't think he'd done that at all. I don't think he'd ever run, you know, further than Luis Palma. And Palma, what he wants is somebody to run beyond him so he can put that pass in. Like, he could, before he scored, he had a header go wide, and he had another one in the derby game. That he should have scored. There was a harder to the one that he actually scored. And then there was a pass where he made that run that he made at Dens Park, and then he never got the ball. I think maybe it got cut out by Goldson. But you could tell that he's now been told, like, you need to get into the box, and the hardest guy to defend is the crasher, like the
third man.
Third man who comes into the box, because they can follow Kyogo and they can follow whichever of the wingers doesn't have the ball, Maida or Palmer. But it's the guy coming through, and that's what he's really done really well. And I'd be interested to, if Quinny goes to the press conference, you can ask him this, but in terms of whether that's a coaching thing or whether that's just him feeling more comfortable in the team. Because, like, when he played against, like, there's a reason they played in the Champions League, right? Rodgers clearly thinks that he's tactically good, he don't give the ball away, and he tracks, you know, he presses well. And I just thought, that's fine. It's actually probably more useful against Atletico Madrid than it is against St Mirren. So I'm impressed that he did that, and I think he just needed, like, the goal at Dundee was a bit of a scuffer, but, like, sometimes you just need one to go in, and then you're off and running, you know. And so I'm really impressed with him. I think he's a good option for us to have, because he is a very different player to Hatate. And, like, it might be that, you know, I think O'Reilly and McGregor are going to start pretty much every game, so we need that other spot is very much up for grabs. And, like, Hatate, it's good to have 2 guys who do 2 different things. So, and I think with him as well, he's the sort of guy where we could go out and buy him now. Like, we've got this option in the contract, and I think nobody would have missed him if he'd have been Nat Phillips. But on the 1st of December, we'd have gone, you know what, mate, we'll give someone else. In fact, I think I said in here, I don't know why we're playing him. We should be playing Holm. Because he's our player. But now I think we can see why, you know, when players have come through that Benfica system, they tend to play, especially midfielders. Like, every time we'd play them, I just think they've got like 6 of these dudes, like Rafa Silva and
definitely.
Bernardo Silva.
His tactical awareness and the way he plays football, you can tell he's come out of the Benfica academy. We've obviously had Jota a couple of years ago, who was of a different position but a similar mould in terms of how he played football. Like you've said there, Bernardo offers, for me, obviously O'Reilly and McGregor are your two players you're never going to drop out of that midfield. They're always going to play. For me, Bernardo offers a different option to what the other guys do. Like, so if you're David Turnbull, Odin Holm, Tomoki Iwata in that third midfield role, and compared to what they do, he does totally different in terms of making those third man runs and offering dynamism, better passes, technical ability. Like, you've seen the assist against St Mirren, just a lovely chipped ball over the top for Greg.
That was great for Taylor. Even Taylor couldn't miss it.
Even his first assist as well, for me, he kind of does a wee Cruyff turn on the St Mirren defender.
Yeah.
It would be so easy for him there to have just rattled in a shot that could have went AWOL over the bar, even out of the stadium, going by the size of how St Mirren Stadium.
Are you talking slightly about one of maybe the other options who would have definitely shot it into the nearest defender?
Potentially.
Wee guy, kind of Motherwell kind of look about him. Rattled it into a defender and gone, that shot was on.
But yeah, potentially. He kept his cool though. Brilliant pass into Matt O'Reilly, who puts it beyond Zach Hemming. Brilliant goal for that one. 2 assists in the game, and obviously got his goal in the derby. And he's fully deserving of his starting place in the team for me. He's taken his opportunity in the team over the past couple of weeks. And if I was Brendan Rodgers right now, I would be thinking about activating that buy clause. Obviously, there's still a lot of time to go. It's only a run of 3 games or so where he's done well. So still a lot of time for Bernardo to further prove himself and further shows what he can do. But the signs at the minute are very good. In the derby, we had the goals, obviously, that we've spoken about. Now, Alistair Johnston, he's caused a bit of a meltdown across the city and Govan. Ball comes across. This was, I think it was in the first half, and Celtic were 1-0 up.
Late 30th minute, something like that. 36, 37, something like that.
So, arguably a pivotal point in the game, because Celtic looking to get to half-time with a 1-0 lead. If the opposition got one back, you go in 1 each at the break, they have the momentum. The ball comes over into the back post area. Johnston's kind of grappling with Sima, and he's trying to usher it out for a goal kick, let's just say, and it comes off his hand. Now, it's waved away. Well, it goes to a VAR check, and it's waved away. For me, at first glance, I thought it was going to be given as a penalty because I seen the ball hit his hand. But then someone sitting behind me, Declan McConville, who's a good friend of the site, he used to be on this podcast, showed me a video at half-time, and it was of the Sima being adjudged to be offside. So therefore, the correct decision was indeed made. Now, the team from Ibrox have not accepted this correct decision and made, I don't know how many statements they've made. They don't want Willie Collum to referee their games anymore. It's just unbelievable that they can't accept that a correct decision has been made against them and that they've lost the game fairly. What do you make of this, Meehall?
Well, I mean, when something like that happens, right? Let me put you in the position of the Australian-based Celtic supporter, or the foreign-based Celtic supporter. You think, I need some analysis of this. I need someone who can really get to the heart of what's happening, and that's what Celtic TV are there for, because they didn't know it was offside. Celtic have never committed a foul. I don't know if you know that. If you live outside of the UK and you get to watch on Celtic TV, we've actually never committed a foul. So I was given I think it was Jerry McCulloch and Simon Donnelly, maybe? I can't remember who it was. They're all like sort of Waldorf and Statler from the Muppets, the Fenian edition. But yeah, so no, I didn't get to see it either. I didn't know it was offside. I thought, oof, we got away with one there. But then, having watched it live, I thought they're going to give this, because much like the people across the city, I am conditioned to think of referees acting in a certain way. And I thought penalty to Rangers, obviously. But then we basically get the Sky footage, but we don't get the Sky explanation. So often they don't know what's happening. And nobody had told Celtic TV what was happening. So 10 minutes later, we see this offside and go, oh, it was offside. That's, remarkably simple to understand. That's why it wasn't given. We move on. We take it to the SFA next week, to quote a fellow, in-house TV commentator. And I just thought, I didn't realize, right? So their big thing, as far as I can tell, is the process of it. So they should have, gone to VAR, and then it would have just got took off anyway. Does that make it better? Like, I don't understand. Like, I genuinely,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of these Celtic fans who are like, I don't think they're biased. I think they're incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's a lot of unconscious bias, which I think we also see the benefit of. Like, if I was a St Mirren fan, I'd be really annoyed the amount of times that we get borderline decisions against them, because it's a lot easier to give decisions against St Mirren than it is to give them against Celtic or Rangers. But yeah, I don't know. I've never thought Willie Collum was a particularly biased referee in our favour. I thought he's been incompetent on many occasions. Yeah. But, you know, he looks a wee bit like Randall from Recess. If you remember that TV show, who was also a bit of a tout, if I recall. It was a long time since I watched children's TV. Yeah. But yeah, I just thought they're incompetent. But then with VAR, they tend not to be as like brazenly incompetent. Like, and I just thought he's going for it. His hand is not particular. It's not like it's out here, you know. It's not. Yeah. And Seema's hand is right next to him, so they must have just gone 6 and 2 threes. It's not like a completely glaring Connor Goldson's punched the ball over the bar. Oh wait, they didn't give that. Yeah, you could have possibly guessed. But yeah, it wasn't like completely glaringly obvious, and there is a threshold they have to reach, you know, to be like, this is a howler. You need to go and look at that. And then 10 minutes later, they go, oh, well, it was offside anyway, which they would have found out if they'd have looked at it at the time. So really do not understand it, other than you can't deal with the world, do you? On my golf partners, though, I did bring up we shouldn't mention their game, but this, 74 games without a penalty conceded. Yeah. Just about to take the world record, and mysteriously they conceded a penalty whilst winning 2-0. And there's not this conspiracy or anything, but I brought that up as sort of a wind-up of these two lads I was playing golf with, and they just flat out did not believe it. They were like, it's just not true. And I was like, it is true. Like, it's not. There's a lot of things that people go, you know, that we believe that they don't believe, right? In the world of El Clasico. But you could really just count. And I was like, well, so who was the last time you conceded a penalty to? And they were like, in the Champions League. It's like, yeah, that doesn't count. Yeah, exactly. That's not the point. Yeah. Do you not think the fact that you conceded 5 in 6 games when it wasn't refereed by Scottish people kind of confirms the general hypothesis here? Yeah. They generally just didn't believe it. And I thought, these are normal guys with, you know, jobs. They're not like swivel-eyed Buddy Orangeman. Like, they're normal people who seem to be very sensible. And they just didn't believe it. And then, of course, this whole thing happens. And you're like, no. There are lots of those people out there who are just like, I will, in every other aspect of my life, I'm a normal, rational human, except for this one, in which case I'll believe that, you know, grass is blue and Larkhall Asdas is the same as all the other Asdas. So
yeah, I know. It was February 2022, the last time Rangers had
who scored it? Who scored the penalty?
Lewis Ferguson,
who has now scored the most goals for a Scots player in Serie A in the time. Yeah. That's a great start.
Yep. So for the penalty they could have had against Celtic, their main point was in their argument that there's a bit of everyone's against us here, is that it was looked at and then the penalty wasn't given, and then the offside was checked, I don't know, about half an hour later, 40 minutes later, and that's when that came out. So initially they're just thinking it was going by the handball, and VAR didn't tell Nick Walsh to go and look at it, hence why they think there's something against them. But say the penalty was given, VAR would have then checked the attack and play phase and found that there was an offside. So the correct decision would have been come to regardless if Rangers got a penalty or if they didn't. So I don't see what the big song and dance has been made about here. And the correct decision was came to, albeit promptly, and it benefited Celtic, and it was fair. So happy days. We can move on with our lives. And I cannot, frankly, be bothered with the amount of statements, the amount of media coverage this is getting, rather than something like Leon Balogun spitting at the Celtic fans, which I have seen.
I've not seen that at all, but I read about it, and so the thing that got me about it as well, not so much the penalty thing, but like Bernardo. I mean, he was booked for going in the crowd, which I would say the crowd came to him rather than the other way around. But like, I don't think he wasn't like he leapt into the North Curve. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
But he was skating on pretty thin ice. Like some of his tackles on another day, you could have said there's a second book in there. But I feel like if something like that had happened to Celtic, I wouldn't be talking about the penalty that wouldn't be given anyway. I'd be talking about the fact that they just fouled, you know, a guy who could have been sent off. Johnson could have been sent off.
Yeah.
Like, who was the one late on for them as well? It was a shocking tackle on Taylor. I don't know who, one of their players.
Yeah, I think it might have been, I can't remember who it was, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So, like, I feel like there was like 4 or 5 other things that the refs made horrible errors on, some of which we like should have punished Bernardo, for example. I feel like he could have easily been sent off. And like he got subbed because he was about to get himself sent off. Yeah. Like, and Johnson as well, like he got done and pulled somebody down and had a few other ones where you think, like, if he hadn't have already been booked, he probably would have been. Yeah. I feel like that's what I'd be angry about. If I was them, I'd be like, well, they just kicked us all day. But you can't do that if you're Rangers because, like, we just kept the ball off them for ages. So yeah, exactly. Like, the thing is, things like that, they're all thugs. Doesn't really work when they've had 65% of possession and you've been chasing shadows for most of it. So I know Celtic were dominant, utterly dominant in the ball. I thought particularly when the score was 1-0 and Celtic had a wee spell after it where they were going for a second. And I felt as though if a second goal went in, it could have easily turned into a 3-0, 4-0 demolition job. But after the game, there's obviously been spoke of with the VAR, the refereeing decisions, etc. Brendan Rodgers made some pretty noteworthy comments in his post-match press conference. I've not got the exact quotes here, but it was words along the line of, in my time, my 2 spells as Celtic manager, I've came up against 5 Rangers managers, and every time Rangers were coming, and he basically said that if he listened to what the media are saying, he would be scared of Rangers. Clearly, he doesn't listen to the media because he's not, and he has a brilliant record against the Jers. He's only lost 1 game against them in, I believe it's 15. What do you make of these comments from Rodgers about Rangers? I think he's very unfair to Graham Murty because he didn't include Graham Murty. He's actually had 6. But there's a great quote from one of the big. I work in rugby league every day, right? One of the big rugby league coaches here says that if you listen to the punters, you end up sat with them. Yeah. So I think he's a big believer in that. Like, hey, there's a guy who Rodgers is a pretty. I'd say he's a bit of a suit. Like, he just kind of talks for himself a lot of the time. Like, I wouldn't believe much that he says, but in this case, like, he has got a real point. Like, I don't know, maybe, like, as I say, I work in the sports media, right? And you can't go into your biggest, most marketable fixture saying the thing is about Rangers is that they're shit and they might win 1 out of every so often against Celtic because of Celtic having an off day or, you know. But if you look at it over the grand span of time, we tend to beat them more often than we don't, especially at home. Like, when was the last time? Was the one Katic scored a header, maybe?
Yeah. December 2019 was the last time.
So we don't lose to them at home very often. But if you say, you know, if you have to market the game and you want to have clicks, you don't go. I mean, here's the thing, right? On who did I read? Maybe the Herald. I can't remember what it was, but every Friday before a derby, they ask all the writers to give their score predictions. Yeah, and when they actually ask them to put on the record how many of them say Celtic are going to lose, like almost none of them. The Rangers writer will say Rangers are going to win because they asked to, but basically all of them say draw or Celtic win. Like. So, but you've got to create content beforehand. Same way that you've got to create content afterwards with referees. Like, so people don't really they don't really like to have nothing to talk about. So it's a lot easier to say Rangers are good this time, even though all the evidence is basically to the contrary that they're good against all the other teams some of the time, but bad against Celtic most of the time because that's how, you know, 9 titles and 12 titles in the last 13 years. However many since 2000, like since 2000. If you were to say, well, the thing is about Celtic, they usually win about 3-1. Like, that's you could have it's not going to make anybody want to watch the game unless you're a Celtic fan. Like, if your job is to try and sell papers, you go. The thing is, statistically, Celtic tend to win between 2-1 and 3-1 most times we play them at Celtic Park. Like, so I think there was a bit of that about it, and like, obviously, a new manager and we're on a decent run of form. Like, I suppose that makes it a bit of an easier sell. But if you're Brendan Rodgers, you're going, well, hang on. Like, here's the structural problems that Celtic have had are all against the deep blocks, which Rangers won't do. Whereas if you look at the way the Rangers have been playing, like, I don't know, I wouldn't look at Dessers and think he's ever going to score a goal against us. Like, most of the times he'll miss. And, McCausland's never scored a goal at senior football, as far as I'm aware. So they had a lot of injuries as well. Like, I don't pretend to stay up to date with who's playing every week for them, but as long as Todd Campbell's their best player, I'm doing air quotes, their best player, like I'll be sleeping pretty soundly at night. Like, it wouldn't get into our team.
Yeah. No,
so yeah, I think Rodgers knows that. Like, but he also, he's not immune to pressure. Like, he'd have known that he needs to get a decent performance out of his team because they're the hardest team that we play against. But if you look at since he came back, our best performances have been against the best teams. Like, we played well against basically every team in the Champions League, not all the time, smashed by Atletico, but both times against Lazio, I think we were pretty competitive away, lost a bit in the second half, but Feyenoord, we were good until we got Ben sent off. All the games at home, we were pretty competitive. Like, so the better teams that we've played against, we tend to have done all right, and it's at home when we think we should win that we've been rubbish. So I don't know. I feel like Rodgers knows that. I feel like I don't know if he phones it in against the crap teams or if it's just he's never really worked out the deep block. I don't think he worked that out particularly well the first time at Celtic Park.
Yeah, I think
in the way that Ange, for example, pretty conclusively worked it out.
I think it's something Liam Scales, just on the deep block stuff there, commented on after the derby. He said the Celtic team actually prefer playing against teams who come out because obviously it suits Celtic's players and their style of football better, that they can get in behind and get more opportunities and win the match and score goals from there. But the comments for me are just a reminder. And for me, there's been the phrase box office Brendan floated about.
I've never heard that, actually. That's good. He is box office.
Yeah, and I think that phrase and the quotes from him after the game certainly back up that phrase and his name there. It's something that's been floated about on Twitter and people have kind of latched onto. But a message there just to the mainstream media that they maybe potentially hype up this Rangers team too much and that Celtic are the dominant force. They still are the dominant force. They have the better players. They have the better manager, and that's why they won the game. So Celtic winning the derby, it meant absolutely nothing if they didn't go to Paisley on Tuesday night and pick up the victory. But they did. 3-0 win. Early goals in the game, courtesy of Dyson Maeda and Matt Riley. Greg Taylor then got the third in the second half. But it was within the first 60 seconds Celtic scored. It was Maeda who got the scoring going. It was the third year in a row he has scored Celtic's first goal of the calendar year. He done it against Hibs on his debut.
That's a great start.
And then he scored the one at Ibrox last year in the derby, and then obviously opens the scoring here. I think I tweeted out after the goal went in is, I don't know if there's any statisticians, excuse my French there, watching the podcast, listening to the podcast, comment down below, is this the earliest goal Celtic have scored into a calendar year? So 50 seconds into their first game, is that the earliest they've ever scored in a calendar year? I wonder if that is true, if anyone can remember any previous games. But Meehall, you've said...
I'm really thinking about this now, but you've set me up for it.
Yeah, I know, it's an interesting one. But you've obviously seen the highlights. What did you make of the game? Yeah,
well, I wouldn't want to give too deep a summary because I didn't see the whole game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the goals, so I think that shows what Maeda's good at, and that's why he's a much better player. I think always has thought he's a better player on the right than the left because he can make that run, which I think when you've got someone like Palmer who will always come in, having a guy who can make that run inside the fullback, and he's just so fast. Like, I think he gets a little bit maligned because of his finishing, but like he's won so many penalties and free kicks. Like, got guys sent off. There was one at Hearts earlier in the year, or maybe it was in the late Ange period, where he got a guy, I'm pretty sure he got one at Hearts players sent off for it. Like, because they can't deal with his pace. And the funny thing is, if he left him go, he'd probably miss. But like, you can't really take the risk of it.
Even in the derby, it was Maeda who got Balogun sent off. On goal, so definitely.
And it's when you've got your best, I think our best creative players is O'Reilly and Palmer, especially Palmer coming in, hitting towards the back post. And then O'Reilly, where he's playing in between the centre half and the fullback. And like, that's where Maeda needs to be, because that's where he's going to get the most opportunity to run through. and he can still get that head of steam up from coming in off the wing, which I think if he played in the middle, like he does for Japan, for example, he's just a pressing blunt instrument, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's where you can get the best advantage out of his the fact that he's very one-footed on his right foot, and the fact that he's very fast, like there he's pressing, like they're his best things. And I think, I think that was my main takeaway, was like they should be showing him that and going, mate, you should make that run 50 times a game. Like always make that run and we'll find you. Because I think if you're Matt O'Reilly, you should be looking up and going, if I put it into that area, there's nobody going to catch him.
Yeah, definitely.
The worst case scenario, he's on his better foot and he can slam it across the goal towards whoever's. If you're Kyogo, you're saying, if that ball goes that way, break your neck to get into the middle and it'll come across. I think, the Bernardo goal was great as well, just to see him. The Bernardo pass for the O'Reilly goal, just to see him get into the box, like we were talking about before, just getting ahead of the man with the ball. Like, I feel a lot of the time our problem is that we wait for somebody else to go, and it's taken us a while to realize that Palmer's not ever going to run in behind, basically. So it's up to the Palmer to come in and somebody else to make that run. And we'll come on to this a little bit, I guess, when we talk about the January window. But like, I feel if we had a left back who went outside, that would we'd then have two people running beyond the ball. I'm interested to hear obviously I think like Hatate came back, and Yang was on at the end as well, who I think has been a little bit unfairly treated by Celtic fans. Like, he had one very bad half, but he's been really good on other occasions, I think. Yeah, does some other stuff. So I'm interested to hear what you think of it, because I didn't see the whole game.
Yeah, I think Yang came on in the game, and I think he actually pretty much impressed me. He took on his man, not fearful at all, and that's something he's never been when he's played. It was, like you say, he had one half. I can't recall who it was against. I think it was St Johnstone away. Then Mikey Johnston come on at the break and kind of turned things around. But in that game, he was absolutely awful. And then he came on here. He's had a couple of appearances here and there, and he's done pretty well. He's still just a young kid adapting to the kind of way of life in Glasgow and Scotland and getting used to the language. He's obviously going to the Asian Cup now. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Maeda, like you say, I've always been an advocate of Maeda on the right as well, to be honest. I think even the first touch that he took for this goal, I don't know if he meant it or not, but just to get across.
That's just Maeda. If he does anything good, he's clearly chance he didn't mean it.
Yeah, he takes a brilliant first touch to get across his man and just hit it. I think it was with the left foot back across that came in. So it was a brilliant goal. And Maeda, I feel what he's brought in the past couple of games. He's had some key moments, obviously, that he's caused Leon Balogun to be sent off in the Glasgow derby, and he was really good against Dundee, and then in the game just past there, he's scored a goal. So what he brings to the team has been noticeable, and Celtic have certainly missed that when he was out injured for I think it was a 6-7 week period he was out. So he's a crucial player, and I think he potentially gets overlooked at times by some of the supporters because he's not that kind of too pleasing on the eye type winger like potentially Jota was or Luis Palma can be at times. But yeah, Maeda's crucial. Even to the way Ange played, he was absolutely crucial, and he's again been pivotal under Brendan Rodgers. But I'm going to talk about now a player who's come into the team in the absence of Cameron Carter-Vickers. He played away at Dundee, come off the it was Stephen Welsh come off the bench against Dundee, my bad. Come off the bench against Rangers in the derby for an injured Stephen Welsh, and he started the game in Paisley's. Mike Nawrocki, now he was signed in the summer for around about £4.5 million. Played against Kilmarnock in the loss, suffered an injury rarely seen, rarely in matchday squads. He's kind of come in from the cold in the past couple of weeks, and for me, he's done pretty well. He's not done himself any bad favours, put in some decent performances. What do you make of Nawrocki?
So, me and Quinny spoke about him a couple of weeks ago, and I was a backer of him. I thought if you spent that money, you've not spent it for no reason. Like, he's not become crap overnight. And you couldn't really judge him. Like, he hadn't played since August. Like, when he came on against Rangers, that was the first time he played since August. And I thought what I was actually advocating was that they should drop. Like, Scales was playing as well as he could and could only get worse, basically. Obviously, Cameron Carter-Vickers getting injured makes that you can move him onto the right and it's fine. I thought he was really good against Rangers, like generally really good. Like he it'll get lost because of Kyogo's finish, but the pass to O'Reilly, who plays it to Kyogo, he takes out about 5 defenders. It's a real. He gives it a whack all along the deck through what's a pretty difficult pass, and I just think we don't have another defender who'd even try that. Like, and one of the things that we've missed, I think, since Moy was very good at it, Bitton was unbelievable at it, and that's why I think Rodgers tried to make him into a centre half. But if you notice the stat packing of like is how many players you take out of the game with one action, and I think that a reason that Ange loved Bitton was because they could bring him on and he would just pass it straight directly up the field, like taking out several players. And Moy did it a lot as well. Like Moy's scores were off the charts. So even though he was very slow, his passes took players out of the game. And I think there's a lot of that in the Rocky. Like I think he can, like he's not afraid to play that difficult pass that maybe is slightly longer. Like, and our problem generally is getting the ball from Scales and whoever the other centre half is, the rotating cast of other centre halves, to O'Reilly and whoever's playing, Bernardo, Hatate, whoever's in that role. Like, so we just end up passing the ball to McGregor when it comes back, and then we go out to Taylor and it comes back, and we go to Johnson and it comes back, and we then try and build down the sides, which is sometimes is fine, but you end up doing the horseshoe of death a little bit. And I think if Naraki can be encouraged, I actually thought there was a bit of this in Lager Bielko, but then he's much more it's a genuine long pass, as opposed to more of a rattled, like low pass into feet. And if you do that to O'Reilly, O'Reilly's control is so good, he'll take that in. Like, and Hatate will do. I mean, obviously Hatate has not been. He's on the other side and he's not been playing, but I feel like you could trust his touch. You could definitely trust Bernardo's touch. I think that you wouldn't worry about that for a second. And then suddenly you're turning onto the in the half space there on the right hand side, and that's exactly where Kyogo wants O'Reilly to be. You suddenly got Kyogo on the left, Maida on the right, and all your options are open to you. So I think if you can get him, it'll be interesting to see when Carter Vickers comes back, because I think he played on the left at the start of the year, and I kind of thought a left-footed player would be better. Yeah. And there's a guy, I don't know if you're aware of Stephen Russell, who does like a lot of he used to do analytics stuff. SR Football is his handle on Twitter. Yeah, I've seen him on Twitter. Fellow Celtic supporter from Rochdale. There's not that many of us, but you know, it's me and him and my brother, as far as I know. I don't know if he's got any siblings. But so he was a big advocate of a right-footed player on the left because he thought it opened the angle up. This is when Kobayashi came into the team, I think, and he sort of, the obvious thing is left-footed player opens that pass to the winger, and he sort of thought it's to do with the angle, the way the angle of the ball coming into the player. So it'd be interesting to see what happens, because I think the best two centre-backs we have is Carter Vickers and Nawrocki. Yeah. But it'd be very harsh on Liam Scales if he was to... Yeah. He's really done nothing wrong, but I just feel like he is at the best he can be, whereas those two could... I mean, Carter Vickers' best is way higher than Liam Scales is, and Nawrocki's could be, I think, is a lot higher. His ceiling, as they like to say, is a lot higher. And I don't really know, when Rodgers was saying that he needed to see something in training or blah, 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 that was one of his classic, like, sort of Brendan... It's not big time Brendan, is it? I don't know what it is. It's sort of Brendan bullshit. That's what it was. And I think, like, I don't know. As someone who attends coaches' press conferences regularly, I'd be like, do you want to elucidate on that? Any more that you could give us on what? Don't just say these random things and then just move on to the next bit. Is no one going to ask to follow up and go like, so what's he doing wrong? Is he still injured? Is he? As a member of the media, I get very frustrated at the mainstream media in Scotland's inability to ever even find out who's fucking injured at once. Like, So I mean, I think a lot of times, especially with defenders, like it's about taking your chance because you don't really rotate defenders. So I'll be interested to see if he has to keep playing the way that he's playing, and I feel like I'm not sure that Rodgers has always liked that sort of defender. Yeah. Like if you think who played in his previous teams, like Boyata and Simonovic, like it wasn't really their game. I think I would have loved to see Nawrocki in an Ange team. Like he would have been really told, lose the ball, mate. Don't worry about it. Keep playing that pass. Yeah, it looks that. Yeah, I would agree with you. It looks that kind of dynamic, kind of centre half who's very comfortable on the ball for me. Even I remember in his first couple of games, he played up at Pittodrie against Aberdeen, the second game of the season.
he seemed very comfortable bringing the ball out, even at a ground like Pittodrie. It's a very tough place to go to, and dribbling it out and making those runs CeltsAreHere used to make. I kind of recall making a couple of them.
I'm the president of the CeltsAreHere fan club, so
yeah.
big I am, man.
I think for Nawrocki, it was obviously, like you said, it was his first appearance since August, and to come in to a game of that stature when you're probably not expecting to make an appearance, you rarely see centre halves getting substituted, and put in a performance like he did for me was excellent. But I said this at the game when I was speaking to my dad. I was like, "You've signed him for £4.5 million from a team Legia Warsaw, who are one of the top teams in Poland. He's a Polish international. He was in the World Cup provisional squad. He might have been even in the full squad for the World Cup in 2022. He's not going to be a bad player. He's not going to be a dud. He's going to bring quality despite his age. And for me, he's shown that over the past couple of games. He's done really well, and it'll be interesting. On you go.
So, you just made me think of this. Yeah. So I brought this up briefly with Quinny a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the way the squad's built. Yeah, and it's something I brought up during the game to my, just because you mentioned, because you were saying to your dad, brought up to my brother. We think that we exist in this bubble where only football in Glasgow exists and matters, as if there were not other derbies in the world or not other pressurized environments, right? Mm-hmm. And we simultaneously get annoyed by sort of saying, you know, Liverpool v Man United, such a big game, blah, blah, blah. All derbies are as big as the place that you live in. Like, ours is a massive one. Yeah. But like, say, so if you're a guy who's played for Legia Warsaw, I don't know if you've seen many Legia Warsaw games, but I would class that as a pretty high pressure environment. Yeah. Expected to win most weeks. Pretty full stadium, like really aggressive fans. Like, yeah. When he came on, I wasn't worried for a second about that he won't be able to cope with the occasion. Yeah. Like, not for a second. I thought he'll be used to this. Whether he'll be used to other aspects of Scottish football, I don't know, but he won't be. The size of the game and the size of the crowd, like when he was playing for Legia Warsaw as a Polish guy, like that's pressure in a way that we put pressure on Callum McGregor or guys who are from, you know, who get the game or, you know, understand the league or whatever it is, like complete nonsense. So he, and that's when we signed Juranovic, I thought exactly the same thing. Like he came on at left back away at Ibrox, and I thought, well, hey, this guy's played away at Wisla Krakow and this guy's played away at Lech Poznan. Like, I'd be more afraid of them than I am playing at Ibrox. Like, because we don't have like 3,000 pissed up skinhead Nazis behind the goal. Like, even the Rangers fans have got stewards. Like, so, and also like he is. I think it's underrated. But I think he's 24. Like
22.
Is he only 22?
Turning 23. I just was checking the age. 23 next month, February the 7th.
I wonder if I've still got I made a big dossier on how old our players were and how many games they played. So I think he's one of these where he's actually played a lot of football. Just off the top of my head, I think he's played a lot more football than like Stephen Welsh played 50 games and he's nearly 25. So I think he's one of these that you think like you were mentioning, like he's been in the national team. He's played for the best, if not one of the best, if not the best team in Poland in a real high pressure environment. I thought he'd stroll it. Like, would he be able to, like, the players that he's playing against the Rangers, are they better than the players who play for Wisla Krakow? Like, maybe. I don't know. If they drew him in the Europa League, I'd probably back Rangers to win at home and lose away. So, you know. Yeah,
he's done really well for me. Another player who's coming back into the fray just is Rio Hatate. We've seen Lee Labada come off the bench in the derby. On social media, he seemed really happy to have made his return. But Hatate, for me, was after the game. I don't know if you've seen it. It might not have showed it in the highlights, but it was very emotional. Let's just say with Brendan Rodgers, Rodgers was giving him a hug, and Hatate looked to be crying on his shoulder. First kind of game he's played in a long while. When he came on, he didn't look like a player who'd been out injured for, I don't know how long he's been out for, a good couple of months now.
Yeah, wow.
He didn't look like that type of player. He came on and he done really well, making forward progressive passes. How big is his return going into the second half of the season?
I think he's more than almost anybody. He's our most important player against low blocks. Yeah, like I think he's the guy who, like the way that I think of it, the reason that Ange loved him is because he gave the ball away so much. He got an opportunity to counter press. but like it's a bit glib. But like he's not a sideways passer. Yeah, and I think that can actually be quite annoying if you're playing against. Did he play against Feyenoord? And I thought maybe some of these passes are a little bit Hollywood. You need to just
tone it down,
calm it down a little bit. But like St Mirren, most of the teams that we play against, you want a guy who's going to take his man on in the middle. He's going to take players out of the game. He's going to try passes that most people won't try. And I think Hatate, like I genuinely think he's our best player. Like in terms of a guy who you could drop into, like if Man United signed him tomorrow, like I'd go, yeah, I could see how he could play in that team. I wouldn't think he'd be their best player, but like he'd do something that nobody else is doing. He's got I think he's got a real super strength. You know, I don't know if that's a commonly used phrase, but like my Maedda's super strength is his pressing, right? He's not the best player in the world, but if you were to rank players solely by their ability to press, like he'd be right up there. And I think Hatate's got two things which he's exceptional at, which is what I think of as the short memory. Like he doesn't forget. Like he immediately forgets good and bad things that he's done. He makes a mistake, he just flushes it and just does. It's like every time Samaras had this as well in fucking Spades. Like every time he got the ball, it was like the first time he'd ever got the ball. He didn't ever think, "Oh, I've missed, so I'm never going to try it again." He just constantly tries stuff. Yeah, and I think he's got his execution, especially like mid to long passes. I think he's brilliant as well. Like he'll play a big switch where you think. I just think of the one that Juranovic threw it in and he caught it full on the volley as the perfect example of like not only like okay, maybe other players in the team could do that, but nobody else would try it. They would just be like, "This is a ridiculous thing to do." Even Jota gets the ball. He's like, "How did this get here?" And like he does. I think he kind of needs. It'd be interesting to see how he goes with Palmer because they've really not played together that much. Because I think Palmer's very. If Hatate would like it if Palmer went beyond, and I don't think he will. And I wonder if they'll play a bit on top of each other. But if Hatate keeps running on, like I think of the goal he set up in the game, was it the semi-final or the final at Hampden, where he cuts it, the second goal where he cuts it back to
for Kyogo.
I think if he plays like that, where he goes, he'll pass it and then go onwards, like they can play really well together, but I worry that they might just always want to play on top of each other. Yeah. Like the goal he scored against home to St Mirren, where him and Pai looked like a great goal, but it was basically because I think Palmer shot the ball into him and then he shot it afterwards. So I thought, oh no, you lads are trying to play on top of each other. But I love the balance of the midfield with him on one side and O'Reilly on the other. I think really works very well. So especially because he's a little bit more left dominant. So I hope, and he's also a guy you can, if he doesn't start every week, if Bernardo plays some games, you could still be confident that if you brought Hatate on with half an hour to go, that you would just pick up the game straight away.
You can change it. Even if you're in need of, say we're losing 1-0 away at Hibs or something like that, you can call on Hatate to come off the bench. You know, he could change a game just like in the click of a finger like that. Rodgers said he's going to have a big second half of the season. He's going to be a big player for the team. Same with what I said about Mike Nawrocki. Said he's someone we can expect to see more in the second half of the season, which is very positive and good to hear. After the St Mirren game, the players were out celebrating. We could have, well, not celebrating, but kind of letting their hair down, per se, after the first half of the season. It was on Benjamin Siegrist's girlfriend's Instagram. It was an Instagram story. I think it was Alistair Johnston, Mikey Johnson, Tony Ralston, Matt Riley, Louis Palma, and Siegrist himself all out. And Wonder Bar in the town. Good to see that they're all together in a bar letting their hair down.
Yeah, well, I'd actually follow Benji Siegrist's missus, though she is a local celebrity in Sydney. Yeah. She's a radio DJ here. That's great. We met her on Elite. There's like an expensive form of Tinder where, but like you have to be a celebrity basically to be on it. So she's she's one of these. I don't listen to morning radio, but it's like all this. I don't know if it's existing. Obviously, because Sydney's like a massive city where everyone drives everywhere. Like it's like constantly competing. There's like 10 radio stations, and they all have they'll have 3 people on the breakfast show. And they'll all be called like Whipper and Drongo And there's always one woman, and the picture on the side of the bus will be the two blokes in sort of what we like kind of pose, and the woman going, what they like. That's the look. And you see them. There's like 20 different radio stations for this, but she's one of them. So she mustn't be on the radio now. She must be on annual leave because she's in Glasgow. But her and Seager are still loved up. I think he's going to move to the A-League at some point as a result. I hope he does, but because then he wouldn't play for Celtic anymore. But yeah, it's great. No, it's really good. Like I feel this is something that had this been 10, maybe not even 10 years ago. Like we were discussing it off air, not to show my age difference over you, but I've been in Carbon in Glasgow when Aidan McGeady was there. And so 2007, maybe? When did he leave us? About 2007, maybe? Yeah. And I didn't think it was a bad thing. I was like, you know, he's a young lad. He's not. They're not going to get him. Go knock yourselves out. Like I can tell you now, living in a city with about 150 professional rugby league players, all of whom are as famous in Sydney as Celtic players are in Glasgow. You see them out all the time. Like, you see them constantly out, and it's like, who cares? As long as they're not getting arrested, and as long as everyone has a good time. I mean, like, if you get nicked and you're fighting people or doing stuff you shouldn't be doing, then maybe that's your problem. But in general, like they seem like young lads who heads screwed on.
Yeah, definitely. It's solid, especially after
you've gone and they're away for them. They're off for the next 10 days, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely. They're allowed to go out. They're young lads, like you say. They've got their heads screwed on. They know what they're doing, and it's fair enough to them. It's actually a bar me and my mates got rejected from going into at the door on Saturday night after the derby. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about me and my.
Still have your hoops balaclava on, or
no? Unfortunately, not. We didn't, but still didn't do us any good. Where else we could have been partying?
So here's the thing. I saw this video, right? And I didn't think Louis Palmer could speak English, but apparently you can. Is he just a good laugh, or is he like? Can he speak English? Have you heard of interview?
Maybe he can. I'm not sure. I know there's like Bernabe can't really speak English, but potentially. But he was out.
I'm just imagining that. You know the meme of the guy and the woman, like, and he's like shouting at her in the club. And I'm like, that's David Turnbull talking in incomprehensible Scottish to a guy from Honduras who doesn't speak English.
He must be able to, because all the lads he was out with were English speaking as their first language, apart from maybe Seacrest. But no, it was good to see them getting out as a squad together. You like to see the players kind of spending time even off the pitch, out of the training ground together. Now, though, we've spoken about the two games we've had, the victory over Rangers, the victory over St Mirren. Let's address one of the other elephants in the room, the transfer window. It has been open for a couple of days now. We're sitting on January the 4th, it is. We've had some rumours already, as you would expect. But first of all, I'm going to touch on two players who could potentially be departing the club soon. David Turnbull and Joe Hart. They are now into the final 6 months of their contract. Do you reckon they will be Celtic players come the end of next season? If not, how will they depart?
So I think Hart will see down his contract and he'll get a lovely send-off on the last day of the season, and thanks for coming, Joe. I think if I was him, I'd probably move to the MLS. I feel like he could get a good MLS gig. It's the middle of their season. He'll get paid well. Go to the MLS, Joe. And their season runs, March to November, something like that. So he's a goalkeeper. He's a goalkeeper. He could go straight into the team. He doesn't have to learn anything else, I imagine. Turnbull, I would sell him now because I think he's going to leave. And I think they've offered him a contract extension, and the fact he hasn't signed it now suggests he won't, in which case we don't really need another centre midfielder who takes too many long shots and only has 1 foot. So I would say sell him now to whoever wants to buy him. But whether they would do that or not, like, I would imagine if you're Celtic, you could see using him from now until the end of the year. And I think a little bit of it will depend on how many Scottish players we have because of this fucking stupid rule. Which I guess if we were to say go and sign Scott McKenna, then that would allow you to get rid of at least one Scottish player. And I think we could. I mean, I guess not being in Europe anymore, this isn't actually a problem until this is like September's problem. Yeah. And like, I don't know. Is he? So he's not going to play if he's play. You can only play that left hand side of the midfield three. So that's Bernardo at the moment. Is then Hatate, and then you've got Holm who can also play there. Who's the third choice. Yeah. So I would cash in now and get rid of him. Find someone in Serie A who wants to buy him. Like if he went to Serie A, he would be a great player. A little bit slower game, a little bit more time on the ball. Like he would actually, I reckon he'd go to Serie A and he would look energetic. So they would, because he's just used to playing in Scotland. Like he would actually be one of the more sort of energetic players. And like he's a better player than Lewis Ferguson. Lewis Ferguson's done great. He's a better player than Liam Henderson. Yeah, he's also done great. So
definitely.
And he's, I reckon we'd keep him just for the homegrown, but he's never going to be our best player. So
no, definitely. He's not. Look, you talk about obviously the homegrown stuff. He's never going to. You're never going to be confident in him starting a Champions League game, and the manager certainly isn't, because of the problem with him playing Paulo Bernardo in most of those games. My opinion on both of them is that, for what it's worth, Joe Hart will see out, like you say, the final 6 months. Nice to be sent off at the end of the season and move elsewhere, or potentially even retire. You don't know. Turnbull, for me, if he was wanting to stay at Celtic and if he was going to stay at Celtic beyond the summer, he would have extended his contract by now. That doesn't seem the case, and he will move either this window or on a Bosman in the summer. Just depends really on what clubs are willing to pay for him. Celtic might deem an offer that they get too low and think that they're worth just keeping him as another option between now and the end of the season, because you never know what injuries are going to bring up. Anyone else you expect to leave this window?
I mean, I would love to see the back of Benji Siegrist, because I think we have a homegrown player problem and we're wasting a home. Why don't we have a third goalkeeper? Who's I've played a lot of Football Manager, and this is how I do
it. For me, in terms of departures, Siegrist is one.
We on this side of the world love a Marco Tilio, and he so the big rumor is he's going to go back to Melbourne City, which is where he came from, and I just really hope he doesn't, because I think I've seen him play more than almost most Celtic fans would imagine listen to this, right? I watched the A-League. He was one of the best players in the A-League. The A-League is a different standard to Scotland, but it's not completely terrible. And he was one of the best players. He's the right age. All of these reasons why I thought this is actually a really good signing. He's a really versatile player. He does a lot of stuff that our other players don't do. He's tiny. That's a problem. But I just think, man, he needs to go and play for Kilmarnock or like Aberdeen or somebody. Like go and play in somewhere in Scotland where you play every week, and we'll be able to see whether you can be, if you go from being one of the best, if not the best young player, sort of 21-year-old player in the A-League, if you then can go and be the best 22-year-old player for Aberdeen, I don't know, man, that makes you pretty close to playing Celtic, I would say. So, but he's been unlucky because he's been injured, but I don't understand what coming back to Australia where he's already done everything that he can do. And I am biased because obviously, like, I've got my Celtic hat on here, and I've got sort of I have to write about the Australian national team. And he's been picked for the Asia Cup. Like, why? Absolutely. In fact, the manager, the Australian manager, Graham Arnold, said he'd picked him because he had the bigger squad. So he basically said, like, he is player 24. If I'd have had 23, he would have been in the squad. So he won't play. But unless everybody gets injured or they're 6-0 up, like, he's not coming on. But yeah, I think there's a couple of players in our squad who I would just love to go and play for Hibs. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think Yang can offer something to our team, but Quan, definitely go and play for Hibs. Like, go and play in our league. Even Lager Bielka, I'd be like, go and play in our league and just get games every week up to the speed of it. And next year, you'll either be like, what I would do would be say Liam Scales is currently either the second or third best centre back at Celtic. We also have Stephen Welsh. I don't know how bad his injury is because no one ever fucking asks. But if he dislocated his shoulder as well, like, obviously I work in rugby league. We get dislocated shoulders more than pretty much any other sport. And it's very much, if it goes back in a relatively painless way, it's all right. It just depends. It depends on how it goes back in, which they've never. Yeah, it can either be it causes a lot of trauma coming out and therefore goes back in badly, or it just goes out and back in again, in which case you can play next week. So, yeah, I would say we've got, if he's fit, between him, Scales, Nawrocki and CCV, we've got 4 centre-backs. Lagerbielke could go and play for somebody else and come back in. I think he might suffer as well. I'm not entirely sure of this, but because the Swedish league works on the opposite schedule, I think there's probably a little bit of like, he's played a lot of football. Like he basically went straight from playing to playing. He didn't have an off season. Yeah. So I think there might be a little bit of like, he just needs to go and calm down somewhere for a bit, and like he still could live in the same house, go and play for somebody, you know, relatively close to Glasgow. You don't have to move house, settle in, still come in on some days to talk to Celtic and go and see if you're any good.
For me, I would, on your Tallio point, I would completely agree with you. What Rodgers said about him in the past is that he's not up to speed with Scottish football yet, and sending him out on loan to Melbourne City totally contradicts that view. You're much better, like you've said, putting him into a team in Scotland, in like a Kilmarnock, a Hibs and Aberdeen, where he can get used to how physical Scottish football is, everything about it. There's a lot of deadwood in the squad as well, like you said, the likes of Quan, who's not even made his senior debut for Celtic yet. He should be.
I missed his first half as well. I've never seen him play. That was one of it was like an early morning game at night, well, late night in Scotland, early morning. I only watched the second half.
He played against his athletic club in
Bilbao,
the last friendly before the season started, and I was at the game. He played the first half and he was hooked at half time, and when I think it's one of the worst first half performances I've ever seen from a Celtic player, and that has not been over exaggerated.
But how so? Like, was he? Could he not trap the ball, or was he just kicking it off the field, or was he slow, fast?
He was very slow. Because obviously he's tall, you don't expect him to be really pacey, but that's the kind of style of player he potentially is. The amount of misplaced passes he has, the fans were getting so restless at him. Maybe I'm just going with the bandwagon and what all the other supporters were saying, but for me, misplaced passes, just everything about his performance that day was very poor. You never know, though. You never know with players that maybe because we've only seen him for one half, you can't judge a player based on that. Send him out on loan to a Kilmarnock, to a Livingston, even someone like that, and see what he can do there. That there will probably be a few loans, outgoings, academy players as well from the B team who could leave on loan for 6 months, because there are a lot of clubs in Scotland who like to sign players on 6-month loans towards the end of the season. In terms of incomings now, shifting our focus, Brendan Rodgers previously, months ago, spoke about once 4 quality signings. However, after the St Mirren game during the week, he said 1 or 2. Would just bringing those 1 or 2 be enough? And what positions do you think really need that quality he's been speaking about?
I think if the quality is a left back, then that's definitely something we need. I mean, we only have 1 left back. Like, we are an injury away from Liam Scales playing at left back, or Bernabeu, or mutual frame. So, yeah, I think it's both just pure necessity. We need a left back. And also, if we could get an up-the-line left back to go with our in-the-field left back, then I think you could pick and choose who you thought was the most suited to the game you had in front of you, and you could change it within the game, potentially, which currently we don't have. I'm not... So there's been a lot of, like, we need another striker chat. I don't really get it. Like, we know Kyogo's going to start every single game he's available for, pretty much. And I think is really good when he comes on. I feel like, if anything, I would like to see more of him. Like, I don't really get where the third striker plays, with the obvious exception of 4 games when we're at the Asian Cup. But now Kyogo's not in the Asian Cup squad, so and like, I really don't understand where, if we got a Lawrence Shankland, right, who is clearly not going to be good enough for Celtic. Like, if we like in the Champions League, he's David Turnbull, but not as good as I don't think he's as good as David Turnbull. And he's 29, 28, something like that. He's not young. Yeah, 20. All of these things that at least he's Scottish, which Majowski isn't. Yeah. Not that you'd ever want him to play in the Champions League, but he would be qualified. I don't get it. Like, what? So the 15th of February when the Asian Cup ends, or if Korea get knocked out before that. So where does he play? Is he going ahead of O? So we've spent this money on O, invested a year into his development. I'd say he's gone pretty well. Like his goals, the minutes ratio is really good. He holds up the ball pretty well. He, I think he's a pretty good player. So what do we do with him now? Now, sorry, we're going to play this 29-year-old who we know can never be better than the Scottish Premier League. And even then, I think he's a little bit not. I think he's as good as Lee Griffiths, who Lee Griffiths scored 100 goals for us, so he shouldn't be too. As a player, anyway. I mean, seems like a bit of a douche, but as a player, he was clearly effective in the Scottish League. But I don't know, he didn't really do anything else other than score goals, which does Lawrence Shankland. I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't really get the striker thing, but you're giving me an extra player I could sign. So left wing, I think we could do the.
I think
we've got Maida and Abada. We've got Palmer and Maida. So I think you could probably. But then again, I kind of think if you were to put Yang out on loan, maybe you could get somebody. But don't we have a Yang that we paid money for and Korean player, young player of the year? And I don't know. I don't think he's been as bad as other people think he's been. I think he's been a bit inconsistent, but he just moved halfway across the world and he's 21. So I wouldn't expect him to be brilliant every single week. And even Jota, great winger, one of the best wingers we've had in years, wasn't great every week. Wingers tend to be like that. So would the kid that we're supposed to be getting from Brøndby, Kvistgaarden?
Yeah, Matthijs Kvistgaarden,
So I've done a bit of research on this guy. He seems to be playing more as a 10. He's presented as a winger, but he's more of a. He's been playing more centrally as a second striker kind of 10. So I think that could be
9.
No, they've got a guy in front of him. So he's more I want to say sort of like the Raumdeuter, like the Thomas Muller kind of player a little bit, where he's not like a Tom Rogic 10 or like a Riquelme 10.
Yeah, he's an advanced 10 type thing.
Yeah, so I think if that's something we don't have in the squad. So if you've got a guy who can play all three across the front and in the middle, that's pretty. And he's a more direct player. I think if you're going to play a lot of 10 men behind the ball, that's a real useful player to have. So maybe that's the kind of player that we need. And you think Rogers loved Rogic. So, and he doesn't have a Rogic, that archetype of player. So maybe there's something in that where you could have a guy if Palmer was injured, you could put him on the left. If you can move Abada you can move Maida to the left, put him on the right, or you could play him in the middle. A lot of the games when we're 1-0 at home, you think we could take off Atati or O'Reilly and put on a guy further up. He's tried to do that with Kyogo and O. So maybe we can get a guy to just who that is his position. Jeff Fields, that's where Kvistgaard's been playing for Brøndby, so I can see that working.
Yeah, I think a deal for Kvistgaarden would make much more sense than a deal for Shankland. Let's just put it that way. What interests me, though, is that Rodgers kind of praised him unprompted in one of his press conferences last week. He said Rodgers was asked about the allocations in the derbies. It was just after Hearts had beat Hibs 1-0 and Shankland had scored the winner. Rodgers was asked, does that, what you've seen the Hearts fans celebrating behind the goal, make you want the full allocations in the Glasgow derbies? And he basically said, I've always wanted that. And he went on to talk about Shankland and said, he's a fantastic finisher, blah, blah, blah. And now it's coming out yesterday that Celtic were linked with him. So maybe putting 2 and 2 together, there could be something in that. But Kvistgaarden links were there since the summer, so probably 2 players that are of interest. Like I've said, Kvistgaarden makes much more sense in terms of Celtic's transfer model. He's still young, has resale value, and can play multiple positions. Shankland's only a striker. He's just a goal scorer. He won't offer much in terms of pressing as well. You don't really see him do that for Hearts. He's just a penalty box striker who can score the odd wonder goal here and there. It would be a good option to have, but if you're giving me the option of 2 of them, or one of the 2, I'd probably go with Kvistgaarden, if I'm honest, just in terms of what you've said there. Other players have been linked as well. At left back, we had Owen Beck yesterday be linked, but Liverpool have thwarted Celtic's move for him because Jurgen Klopp wants to give him a chance in the first team amid injuries to Andy Robertson and Kostas Tsimikas. I'm reading Thiago Araújo. Me and Quinny have spoken about him in a previous podcast where Quinny's basically labelled him as the anti-Taylor, he's quite tall, but he gets up and down the line, puts crosses in, good on the ball, similar to Taylor, but that's what he's been labelled. We've got Niklas Kuhn from Rapid Vienna. Rapid Vienna sits 6th in the Austrian league at the minute, but he's one of the standout players in the division, moving up around £2 million potentially named there. And Scott McKenna is another one as well. What do you make of these players that have been linked?
So yeah, Araujo, I've only what you and Quinny say, and I believe you. But I think the archetype of player I like. I think the slightly taller, faster, goes down the line, left-footed preferably. That's the sort of. I think we discussed this. Me and Quinny discussed it on a previous pod, but like, it's almost the fact that he will go there will make Palmer better because Palmer will cut inside. Yeah. And at the moment, if you're the defender, you can just stand off him because you know he wants to cut inside. And you know he won't go beyond you. Mm-hmm. So if he goes in and then suddenly this guy comes on the out, then you can, it puts another question in the defense's head, which Taylor is basically never going to do. But I'm not as down on Taylor as other people. I feel like he definitely has a role in our squad. Yeah, he's not like Turnbull. Like he is good enough to play, I think, mostly for us most of the time. Especially if you want that inverted player where that's what he's best at. Mm. I think McKenna, like, I don't know. I don't know what money he's on at Notts Forest, but like in a previous world, I would have said he'd be the best Scottish centre back we could have signed, and we need Scottish players. So I'm not against it because is he better than Lagerbielke? Maybe, yeah, probably. At this age, at the ages they currently are at, and like he can clearly play in the SPFL. If he's on 20 grand a week, maybe that's worth it. And we get him for now. Like if we don't pay for him, maybe he would. We don't have a very old squad. He's what, 29, 28? So could be pretty good guy to have around the group, as they say in Australia. He's a good tourist, which means that you'd like to hang around with him, even if he might actually. It usually means he's not that good a player. Who was the other one? Kuhn, Niklas Kuhn. Now, so I've watched a bit of Niklas Kuhn, and I'm actually going to. I'm wearing this is the Berlin Celtic Supporters Club, Berlin CSC. One of our guys, rarely spotted thing, who is a Celtic, one of the originals of the Berlin Sports Club, is a Rapid Vienna fan. So like he was just one of our mates who got into Celtic because we were Celtic, and we just didn't talk about the game in the 80s. But I've texted him. I've put the feelers out. Is this guy any good? Because he watches every single Rapid game. He did also say Bolingoli was good. So you never know. He actually, his description of Bolingoli was you'll have a lot of fun, which I would say
we did. Well, Bolingoli did when he went to Spain.
Bolingoli did, and he's now like I'd say figure of fun among the Celtic support. So we have continued to have fun out of Bolingoli. So there you go. We also had a guy who was an Ike Athens fan, a Greek guy who said that Barkas was great as well. So these are the high level scouting tips you get from asking other people that who support these teams. So yeah, I'm on the process of finding out if Niklas Kuhn's any good. But as an archetype, right? So this is a guy who is looking pretty good in Vienna. Like Rapid Vienna are not like they're not world beaters, but the Austrian league's not terrible. Like pretty, Red Bull Salzburg pretty good, and some good players go through that league. I wouldn't say it's enormously different in quality to Scotland. Maybe slightly below us. Different style of football a bit, but someone like Kuhn, he's gone through the Bayern system and the Ajax system, and it hasn't really worked out. Now, one of the things that I think that we don't do, which we could do, is the sort of what you might think of in football as like the Sam Allardyce signing. Yeah. When he would sign guys who had been, you think of the players in the mid-2000s Bolton team who were like damaged goods but they weren't damaged goods as players, they were damaged goods as people. They'd done something wrong, or like they'd, someone like JJ Okocha who just nobody could get a tune out of. And he put them in an environment that worked for them, and suddenly the player that was always in there came out. I think there's guys like that who we often see it at Celtic in reverse, where the players will be good for us on loan, like Paddy Roberts, and then because they'll go to another team who don't have as much ball, who don't, play on as good pitches or in a more competitive league. And suddenly all these things that have been working in their favour work against them. I think Jota was a good example where he'd played in Valladolid in Spain and been basically rubbish or like not spectacular because he was playing in a bottom, a lower end of the table team and didn't get as much ball. Whereas at Celtic, suddenly he's getting twice as much football, looks twice as good. Yeah. So I think like guys like Nicholas Kuhn, I don't know anything about him as a guy, but if he's the sort of guy who's gone through the Ajax system and the Bayern system, he probably thinks he's pretty good. Yeah. And so putting him in a situation where everyone's going to love him and he's going to feel big time because he plays for Celtic, like I think that's the sort of player that if I had to sketch out an archetype of who Celtic should go and sign, like that archetype would be, he would fit it, like out of a good system. Like Edouard's a good example, out of a really good system, but clearly something had gone wrong, bit of an off the field incident with, did he not shoot somebody with an air rifle, maybe something like that? There was something like that. He'd done something off the field that he shouldn't have done. That had put him, that had maybe made bigger clubs go, this guy maybe is a bit of a loose cannon, personality doesn't fit. And we put him and said, you're shit hard, go and play like it. And he played like it. So I feel like we could be the potential home for this sort of player. Like if I was trying to think of who, there's players all over Europe from big academies with big raps on them. It's a very Australian phrase though. Got big reps on him, mate. I'm surprised Ange Postecoglou never said that. But who everybody's blown smoke up their ass and it's never really worked out, but they're still young. Like, I reckon that's the sort of player that if you're going to take a £2 million punt, would I rather have that kid who's played for Ajax, Bayern? Maybe did he play for Leipzig as well? Maybe. He initially started his career at Leipzig, spent about 6 months there, then he went to Ajax. Made 43 appearances for Jong Ajax, which is like their youth team. Then about 41 appearances for the Bayern B team. Then went to a team in the 2 Bundesliga, whose name I am not even going to attempt to pronounce. As a German speaker, try it and I shall correct.
Erzgebirge AUE.
Erzgebirge Aue.
There you go. Absolutely.
They were like not that far away from Adderton, Berlin. They're not that far from Berlin.
27 appearances for them. After a year there, he went to Rapid Vienna, where he's now been for a year and a half.
So how many games has he got? That sounds like if you can't, because Young Ajax and Bayern they play against, they're playing, the regular league, second tier in Holland, third tier maybe in Germany, Bayern B.
So he's got, I made just 41 appearances for Bayern B, scoring 6 goals, 43 appearances for Young Ajax, scoring 5 goals. He scored 3 in his time at that German team. Rapid Vienna, 7 goals so far in 51.
So he's played over 100 senior games and he's 22.
He's 24. He's 24. He turned 24 the other day, 1st of January. So he's coming into that kind of age where you're needing to kind of have a big break in your career. 2 goals, 5 assists this season.
So he sounds to me like I went and I did a bit of a look up of him, and I did the classic, watched some. Yeah,
I transfer Mark's profile view, some YouTube highlights.
Yeah. I mean, he's not Marian Sved, but he looks all right. Like, it's hard to say because actually, now I think of it, the only player I've ever looked at and gone, this guy's actually shit is Quan. I watched 10 minutes of these YouTube videos. I was like, this guy doesn't look pretty good. He's playing in the second Korean league. Like, what? Why are we signing this dude? Little did we know, I missed his golden 45 minutes against Bilbao. But yeah, as I say, I feel like it's a sort of player that we should try and sign, and that sounds to me like he's. 24 is a little bit older than the guys we have been signing. And I always think of Paddy Roberts as the example of this. Is like, even Paddy Roberts, he did 2 things for Celtic, right? One, he made James Forrest play a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he hadn't played at all, James Forrest suddenly went on an absolute tear because he had zero competition, suddenly had some competition. And he really suited the way that Celtic play football, which is that we have all the ball and nobody really. If you're a winger and you make a few mistakes, you tend to get away with it because the ball comes back 2 minutes later. Whereas if I think if you're Dyson Maeda and he's kind of the opposite of this. Like if he was playing for a team in the low reaches of the Premier League, like he'd actually. Oh, Ryan Christie's a great example. Ryan Christie playing in the low reaches of the Premier League, runs around a lot. When he gets a small chance, he shoots, and some of them go in, most of them don't. But like when he's doing that 10 times a game, it looks really annoying. But when he's doing that 3 times a game or 2 times a game, you think
he stands out. Yeah, he stands
out. So I think he looks like a guy who would suit the way that we generally play football. And I'd rather a 24-year-old guy who's been in 3 good systems and has played senior football for the last couple of years to someone like Yang who's like played really well in Korea. I'd say if you could get him now and put Yang on loan at somewhere, then that seems like a good deal.
Yeah, definitely. Left-footed player, right winger, I believe it is, cutting in on his stronger foot. So
that would be the one worry is that I think that we
lack. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather it was a left-footed player who played on the right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or a right-footed player who played on the right.
Yeah.
No, somebody plays on the left.
Yeah. He looks an interesting player. Probably any winger you could probably play them on both sides. He can play striker as well. So versatile, probably a bit of resale value on him if he comes in and succeeds. He's obviously got that big background at some big clubs. I'm sure between now and the end of the transfer window, there will be many more players linked with Celtic in his mould, in the mould of Araujo.
Go on, sorry, finish. I'm not going to find something, but I am listening.
Plenty more players linked with Celtic between now and the end of the window, I would imagine. We've yet to have any signings, but I would expect 1 or 2 like the manager has said. We've discussed the wins. We've discussed transfer window. Anything else you'd like to touch on?
So, just because it was top of my head there, right? You know, when you look at these guys and you go like, where have they played? Blah blah blah. Do you want to play a game of who can you remember from the summer transfer window?
We can.
This is something I like to do, right? I am obsessive of the Kerrydale Street transfer window thread, the section of the internet. And as soon as the name comes in that, I'm straight over it. I've watched all the highlights. And I swear people just go, wouldn't it be great if we signed this guy that I've watched? Like I saw once on Eurogoals, which hasn't Eurogoals hasn't been on the TV for 20 years, but whatever, Transworld Sport. And then look at him and go, oh, yeah, sounds like the sort of guy. So there's this guy, Fabian Rieder, who was playing. Do you remember this dude?
Yeah, Young Boys. And then he moved to Rennes. And he's moved to Rennes. From Rennes, is what I've heard.
He's played 8 games.
Wow.
In fact, he's actually, according to Wikipedia at the moment, October 22nd, all right, so let's find the more recent. This is great audio. So I follow these dudes to be like, what happens to them? Do you remember Sean Weissman? He was a good one. He was like the next Israeli big thing. I think he was doing that.
Yeah.
I periodically look in and see what he's been doing. Yeah, 8 games, 229 minutes this year, says Soccerway. So he's been subbed in 6 times, been on the bench unused 12 times. Wow. So if I was Celtic,
these guys,
I'd be looking. Well, you look at guys like I know this is basically Aldi and Ayeti we're talking about here, but really good in the Swiss league, couldn't get a game in a better league, so then comes to Celtic. So, but there's like Jota was this.
Yeah, that example
came out of the system. Didn't do well in this situation. Put him into every situation, does brilliantly. So I would be going to Rennes and going, 15 million euros you paid for that guy. How about we do a loan to the end of the season and we'll give you 8 million euros if he's any good? Yeah, potentially. And then you've got him and you've got Paulo Bernardo. And they play the same position pretty much. And he's actually, if I recall, he's more of a 10 than he is than Paulo Bernardo is. He's a 10. There's a number between 10 and 8 that wasn't confusing. Yeah. Another one in that mould I was looking at a couple of weeks ago is Casper Tengstedt, who's at Benfica now. And he's not
played a lot of games. I think might have had a couple of injuries, but when Celtic signed they were looking at this guy who played for Rosenborg.
I remember this dude. Yes, I'm looking at him now.
For Rosenborg, and now he's at Benfica and he's not done too well. So maybe he's someone they could look at. He's no spring chicken. He's about 24, 25 now. But he was meant to be like...
He's 23, and he's...
still quite young.
6 foot tall, 23. I mean, I think I was 23, 22. Now, I'm not sure if you're a big believer in XG, right? But I tend to think about these things. Rosenborg, 14 games, 15 goals in 2022. So he did in the what's the Erste Division? When's that? The Denmark second tier, 26 games, 15 goals when he was 21. Sounds pretty good. Then he gets this big move to Rosenborg, 14 games, 15 goals. So that's shit hot. And then he goes 4 games for Benfica B, 4 games for Benfica. So 8 games in Portugal, 0 goals. And he's got 3 in 19 this year, split across the Champions League and Portuguese League Cup, whatever. I don't know, man. That seems like I'd love to see how many minutes there. That sounds like a man who comes off the bench a lot.
Yeah. He's
so like, I just look at these dudes and go like, I never understand why. Like, I understand why you moved to Benfica, but like, if you're Benfica and you go, okay, so this guy's got 15 and 14. That's insane in Norway. But then he does it for that's not even a whole season. That's like half a season. Like. And so I just think, like, I'd probably just give it a bit more time. Like, what's the guy? You know, the guy who's playing up front for Stuttgart now, Girassi?
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah, the French
guy.
He's
like scoring like 1 million goals, and he's up off contract. I think he's got a release clause, maybe. So everyone's like, we could go and sign him now as a striker. And I think he's had half a good season, like half a good season. Like, you look at this guy's record and you go 96 games total, 41 goals. That's fucking good. But then you realise that all of them came in 6 months. Like,
yeah, I know. He's an interesting one. There's plenty out there. It'll be interesting to see who the club do decide to bring in the January window. Like I've said, there'll be a lot more reports, rumours, and the like between now and the end of the month. Meehall, it's been a great show.
Should we, just before you finish, should we Asian Cup for a minute? Do you want to have a little? We should fit that in because I think we've actually done well out of this. So if you did miss this, so Japan basically haven't picked Kyogo, but they have picked Hatai. He's not fucking played. Like, if you'd have said to me, they're only going to pick 2 of the 3, I was like, well, they won't take Hatai because. But I think they must look at him and go, the things that he does that nobody else does, they also don't have. Did you see there was a link to the guy who got picked instead of Kyogo?
I did not see that.
Shoya, maybe he was called. He's at. I think he might have Kawasaki Frontale. I looked him up. He looks pretty good. Well, apparently he's better than Kyogo if you ask Hajime Moriyasu. I think it's the name of the Japan coach.
Yeah, Hajime Moriyasu. So if you're not up to date, any listeners, Asian Cup squads are out. We know Yang. We're going with South Korea. We know Talio unexpectedly is going with Australia, but like he was mentioned earlier, he's just an added number there. And for Japan, we all expected, let's be honest, Kyogo to probably go with the national team, but he is not. And Hatate and Maeda are both going. Do you think that is a surprise to not see Kyogo going?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I'm amazed. Like, I don't understand who because they picked Maeda as a striker. Maeda only plays as a striker for Japan. Yeah. So there's him and there's Ueda who played against us for Feyenoord. Or is he the...
Ueda, yeah, he plays for Feyenoord, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's the one who played against Feyenoord. I always get him and the guy who was at Frankfurt mixed up. You know what I mean? He's got a very similar name. And then this guy... I can't remember his name, but Mao. It's spelled like Chairman Mao. His first name Mao. I don't know. He's going as the third striker. So I think from a Celtic perspective, my big worry is that we had no strikers. Now, that's if you'd have asked me which one would you not pick, I'd say please leave Kyogo, because I would have actually been. I would have said that's impossible. Please don't pick O, and O will just get to play.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they do, because Kyogo so rarely plays 90 minutes. So somebody else. But would you rather 60 minutes of Kyogo with 30 minutes of somebody else, or would you rather no minutes of Kyogo and no minutes of O? So
yeah, I think everyone the latter. The former, sorry, the former.
And I think one of the games, I think we've got Aberdeen and Hibs away, which the way I think about it is that we miss Yang hasn't been playing that much. Maida and Hatai have been injured, so we're at least used to not playing with them. Tilio doesn't even make match day squads, and I think is, if you're only losing the guy who always comes off the bench, like, you're probably doing all right.
Yeah.
So I think if it's not as bad as it could have been, put it that way.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think the South Korean boys, Owen Yang, are not going to be too much of a miss. Kyogo's a massive boost. Tilio's not going to be a miss, let's put it that way. Celtic have coped fairly well without Rio Hatate since his injury. We've seen the emergence of Bernardo. The only one that probably worries me is Daizen Maeda, if I'm honest. But
then you get Abada was out that time, so at least you'll have Abada will play. And like, it's not, I mean, I don't think Johnson's the best player in the world, but he's not, he has been playing. He's not like you're bringing him from the cold after 6 months of no football at all. He's
match sharp and he's match fit,
So it's kind of annoying, because I would have liked, if you're saying, Maida's going to be away for however long, and Kyogo's going to be away for so long, you'd be like, great, and Yang can actually
get some minutes.
But now this could be sat on somebody else's bench. I'm pretty sure some good Korean football experts that be worth looking up on Twitter, but this is the thing, I don't think he'll start, but the guy that we were in for, Cho, I don't think he's kicked on anywhere near as much as they thought he would. So I think it'll be one or the other. But as I say, working in the Australian sports media, I will be watching a lot of the Asian Cup. So, because Australia obviously are in it, despite not being in Asia. So Australia's plays like Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and all these sort of teams. But it's one of these tournaments, the first rounds of it tend to be quite crap. A little bit like, I've covered a couple of African Cup of Nations as well, and it's the same thing where, like, there's a real big gap between the best team and the worst team. So, like, if you're watching, I remember doing maybe like 2017 or 2018 doing the AFCON, and it's like, once you get like Cameroon v Ghana or whatever, or Algeria v South Africa, it's good. But then if you get in like Burkina Faso against Cape Verde, like, there's a lot of like third division French players playing here and on a terrible pitch, and it's all very slow and it's 40 degrees, And I'm thinking, you won't have the terrible pitches in Qatar, but you'll get a lot of it's really hot, and it's 10 men behind the ball against a team made up of championship players if you're Australia, who will do very well once they start playing Japan and Iran and the good teams. When they're the defensive side, they'll play really well. But actually, it'd be interesting to see if they play like Tajikistan. I think they put Tajikistan, all these rubbish, like, real teams you've never heard of a single player on. And even those of us who love the offering people trials on Football Manager, still haven't heard of these guys. So I think Tilio, there's a chance that Tilio could play, because Australia he is quite unlike a lot of the players that they have. Like, they're a weird team. They've been grafted in from 2004, like, the team. So there's a lot of like up and down kind of midfielders and big lump. I mean, have you seen Hearts play? They're full of soccer. They're full of Australian players, and that's what the entire team's like. Atkinson, Rolls, Devlin, fucking
quite a few there. But
so there's an interesting point to end on, right? The biggest Australian sort of wunderkind that they've had. Well, there's a guy, Nestori Irankunda, right? He's just moved from Adelaide United to Bayern at the start of this. It might have gone now, actually. I'm not sure if he's played his last game in the A-League. He's unbelievable. But, like, he wasn't getting into their team in the A-League because he was so wildly inconsistent, and, when you only cared about winning games in the A-League, he wasn't actually the best player to pick, but he's like 18 and has a
Yeah.
Incredible shot, both feet. He's really fast. Blah blah. Tilio looked way better than him. Way better. Like was one of the best players in the league. I think he was on the bench in the team of the season for last year, for example. And he's only 21. And there was a guy, I don't know if you remember a guy called Garan Quall, who signed to Newcastle, couldn't get into Hearts' team. Like he was before Nestorian Rotunda came into the league. Quall was the best young player who'd ever played in that league, and he was unbelievable in Australia. And maybe this is Australian league shit, but like he couldn't even get onto Hearts' bench. Like he was to the point where everyone in Australia suddenly realised that one of the channels showed the Scottish league. Yeah, they were like, "Oh, the Ange team also have opponents who have." It's like half the league's Australian, like half the national team plays in.
So many.
Plays in it. Yeah. So you look at like that, like someone like Quall. We go, "Oh, maybe Tilio should go and play for Hibs or Hearts." Like he didn't actually even get on there. Garan Quall couldn't get onto the bench there. So maybe I'm fanciful in thinking that he would get onto Hibs's, ahead of Martin Boyle and.
That's true. That's a shout.
So, but yeah, there you go. I'll have to watch it, so I shall report back on the joys of the Socceroos of the Asian Cup.
I'm sure Celtic fans can't wait to hear how the boys do. There's 5 players going. I'm sure Meehall is up to date in the next couple of pods of how they do. Thank you for listening and staying with us for this latest flagship podcast. We've had some great discussions. Meehall, thank you very much for taking the time to record this with us. If anyone is listening, watching on YouTube, etc., have a great January break from football, and we'll see you hopefully next time when Celtic have signed a couple of players. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.